Un bimbo che nasce è una specie di sorpresa per l'umanità. E secondo me è questo lo spirito col quale si debbono accogliere i bambini.
I think the first few years is very much like building the frame of a house. So you're constructing the framework upon which everything else will develop.
Babies learn more in the first 3 years of life than they will ever learn again. They learn more rapidly from 0 to 3 than they will learn from 10 to 13 or 20 to 23 or 30 to 33.
A importância dos primeiros dias, essa preocupação da pediatria e da sociedade moderna, dos psicólogos, em relação a esse período de vida, se deve principalmente a uma fase crítica de desenvolvimento cerebral e desenvolvimento das relações da criança com a sociedade.
There are critical periods in development where the brain's structures are just waiting for the environment to show how does this culture do things.
What is forming in those early weeks and months? What is firing the baby's brain? It's nothing less than a sense of self. How does it feel to be me? How does it feel to be human? What is this? This life, what is this? That's what's forming our sense of self and our sense of the world.
If you think of a newborn baby, the mother holds the baby in the hospital. You have a red, wrinkly little baby you are holding in your arms. They can barely hold up their head. And by 3 years of age, they can walk, they can talk, they even lie about some things. If they have cookie crumbs on their mouth and they were not supposed to eat the cookie and you said, "Did you eat the cookie?" They say, "No, I did not have any." So by 3 years old, they are engaged in some deception. They're engaged in empathy for others. If you hurt yourself, a little 3-year-old can come over and pat you on the shoulder and want to help you. So babies learn a tremendous amount in the first 3 years of life, and scientists all over the world are in a race to try to figure out how the young brain can learn so rapidly. It's very magical time and very important for the rest of life.
30 years ago, even philosophers and psychologists and psychiatrists thought that babies were irrational, they were egocentric, they were amoral, they didn't understand cause and effect, they couldn't take the perspective of another person. And in the past 30 years, our science has taught us that everything is exactly the opposite. Even the very, very youngest babies both know more and learn more than we ever would have thought was possible before.
On a longtemps pensé, en Occident là du coup, on a longtemps pensé que le système nerveux n'enregistrait que lorsqu'il était complètement terminé, mature. Eh bien, en cours de transformation, il enregistre déjà. Évidemment, il n'enregistre pas les mêmes choses que ce qu'il enregistrera quand il sera mûr. Mais même en formation, le système nerveux enregistre les vibrations de l'environnement. Autrement dit, même les voies associatives fonctionnent avant même que le fœtus soit né.
Komm her, Alfred, kleine Maus, was ist los? Oh, wo bist du? Wo bist du, Alfred? Nicht lachen.
C'est-à-dire que même à travers l'utérus de la mère, le fœtus peut percevoir les vibrations des sons, à commencer par la voix de sa mère. Et donc tout ça s'enregistre, tout ça s'enregistre.
In a full-term pregnancy, when a mom has gone to 40 weeks gestation, at birth that baby will recognize her mother's voice. And she does that based on the experience of having heard her mom talk when she was still a fetus.
A gente não está falando de um ser só biológico. A gente está falando de um ser integral, psicossocial biológico, mesmo quando ele está intraútero.
O bebê ele nasce com competências sensacionais para enganchar o outro numa relação de investimento afetivo tremendo que esse adulto vai ter que ter. Ele tem um olfato que ele nunca mais a gente vai reconhecer no ser humano. Por exemplo, o bebê é capaz de distinguir o cheiro do leite materno entre centenas de cheiros. Se você puser um pouco de leite materno de um lado do bebê, da mãe dele, e de outra mulher, ele vai N vezes procurar o leite da mãe. Se você troca, ele acha de novo.
Ele conhece a voz da mãe, ele conhece os batimentos cardíacos da mãe. Quando ela encosta a criança no peito, o bebê fica mais tranquilo, porque ele consegue ouvir um som que já é familiar.
Baby come into the world with some what we call biases or preferences, and they use them in their development.
Érico, cadê o bebê da mamãe? Cadê?
A newborn baby already has a pattern for a human face. Very interestingly, when our babies are first born, they are looking for a pattern that has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. It may be a very abstract face that they have in mind, but they have that pattern in their mind and it draws them to other people. And they have the immediate thought, that thing out there is like me, that moves like me, it behaves like me. I am very interested in that. And so they learn best and first from the people around them. They are very social creatures. They need us socially, and their attention is drawn to us.
To me, you know what is so fascinating is you look at a child's face and it's so sweet and so innocent and so lovely. And what we don't see behind that sweet, lovely face is how much activity is going on. A 3-year-old's brain is twice as active as your and my adult brain. There's so much activity going on, but we don't quite see it because the baby doesn't express at that time. Baby just babbles and coos. And to me, those neural connections are almost like stocks and shares, charts going up. And the more we invest in them, the better the return.
Next time you look at a baby or an infant, if you want to know what's going on inside that baby's brain, every second the brain is making between 700 and 1,000 new connections among brain cells every second. That is taking in all kinds of experiences, physical interactions, kind of the baby's sensations, how a baby is processing what's going on, what a baby hears, what a baby sees. All of that is making connections 700 to 1,000 per second. Don't underestimate how much is going on in the lives of young babies. Don't underestimate how much the brain is responding to everything that's going on around it in a positive way to build a strong foundation or in a disrupted way to create a greater risk for problems later. Not a guarantee of problems, just a risk.
Pour les bébés, ce qui serait fondamental pour favoriser un développement harmonieux de leur système nerveux, c'est de pouvoir les laisser rêver. Rêver, non pas seulement quand ils dorment, mais de leur donner la possibilité de, à travers la lumière, à travers les sons, de leur donner du temps. Pas seulement faire de l'élevage, bon, il faut te laver, manger, aller dormir, etc., mais pouvoir laisser des respirations importantes, les porter contre soi, leur donner la possibilité de sentir leur corps et aussi de sentir tout simplement la nature, de sentir l'eau, de sentir l'herbe, de contacter le monde avec leurs sensations et avec leurs propres émotions, avec leur propre capacité à ouvrir ensuite à toutes les images qui les traversent.
We often say that toddlers have trouble paying attention. What we really mean is that they have trouble not paying attention. So what they're doing is being very, very sensitive to all of the patterns of information, everything that is happening around them. And then they're taking that information and putting it to use to try to solve problems and figure out what's going on in the world.
A volte mi sono sentita spesso dire il bambino ha bisogno di imparare, una sorta di vaso da metterci dentro dei saperi. No, non è vero, non è questo. Non è una tabula rasa dove tu appoggi i tuoi saperi e le tue competenze. L'importante è vedere il bambino come capace di avere tanto dentro, di avere tanto da insegnarti.
Watching children enjoy nature is extremely interesting for me because one of the things I notice is how observant they are. And I know for me as an adult, we often kind of walk around with our eyes fundamentally closed. We're just looking for things that we expect, and they will see things like a bird in a tree that I would never notice. And so they have a sense of observation and wonder that for me is quite inspirational.
In the past 30 years, just speaking as scientists, our ideas about children have been completely revolutionized. Instead of thinking of them as being blank slates or living in a blooming, buzzing confusion, really, we're now realizing that they're the best scientists and the best learners that we know of in the universe.
Children are recognizing novelty in the most mundane things. I've seen children in kitchen pounding different pots and pans because the sounds are different and understanding how they fit together. Or on the beach looking at sand. Sand is a miraculous thing. It shines, it's got different colors. You know, it falls through your hands and you can build it into things. You can put it in flower pots and make castles. You can do all kinds of things. The mind of a child is totally open, unscripted, waiting for discoveries to be made. We would do well as adults to remind ourselves what it was like to be a child.
Watch any baby play, or any toddler or preschooler, particularly babies and toddlers. They work at the same thing over and over again, right? I mean, adults kind of sometimes get bored by that. See a child gets a new toy or something, even if it's something as simple as putting blocks in a cup or I need a simple puzzle. As soon as the child does it, the child wants to do it again, more, again, because there's this inborn drive for mastery.
Babies are busy trying to understand how predictable the world is. Does the world work like this? If I drop that spoon, will it make another sound? Sometimes they do experiments with us. If I drop the spoon, will my mother get excited again? The mother is saying, stop. The baby is thinking, this is wonderful. I understand my mother. I can get her to make this facial expression. And that is one of the reasons babies will repeat things over and over and over. We get tired of it. Babies are repeating it like little scientists, and they're thinking, I can repeat this experiment. Look, it works like this again. Isn't this the most wonderful thing?
Those are things that we, of course, as adults take for granted, but those are things that we actually learned when we were babies. And the way we learned them was through doing these experiments that we call play.
Most of the time, young children are not successful. Children fail a lot. They try to climb up on the couch, and the couch is too high. They try to feed themselves, and things spill. And so we need to boost their self-esteem and make them feel good so they can go through life, which they have to keep going until they can succeed.
Só tiquinho, tá? Pronto, fecha.
Agora sim.
Children with high self-esteem are willing to take some risks and chances about learning new things because they can be wrong, they can fail at something, and if they have strong self-esteem, they're strong enough to make it through that and still be curious and wanting to explore.
Thank you. Okay, where does it go?
What you need is, you need that little bit of challenge and the frustration that goes with not being able to do something so easily so that you work at it. It's not only working at it to master that skill, it's working at it to develop a sense of what it's like to work for something that's not that easy. If you never get that experience of every time you try something that's a little bit frustrating, an adult comes and does it for you, how do you learn how to deal with frustration? Which is a very important thing to learn, right? If everything's too easy, you don't grow. If things are too hard and everything is so frustrating, that's not good. So it's this balance.
Good job, sweetie.
I think that we can nurture children's persistence by letting them try things, letting them learn from their mistakes, not trying to correct everything they do so quickly. To be persistent takes patience. And so we have to model that and encourage that in children.
Babies are very curious about the world. They observe what you're doing, listen to the world around them, and they do have memories. And there are many types of memories they have. The simplest one is called recognition memory. They can recognize the mother's face when she comes back, even when they're very young, at maybe 3 weeks old. But a different type of memory that takes them longer to develop is called recall memory. And recall memory is when you can recollect in your own mind what it is that you saw before. Not just that you recognize it now, but when the thing is absent, that you can think about it when it's absent.
As adults, we feel as if because we can't remember what it was like to be a baby, that nothing is going on. And that memory, that sense of your whole life as a single set of events, doesn't seem to show up until about 3.
Ô Gael, quantos anos você tem agora? Quanto é isso?
Papai.
E antes, você tinha quantos anos?
1.
E depois?
2.
E depois?
3.
E quantos anos você vai fazer no seu próximo aniversário?
4 vezes eu vou fazer depois. Depois 7 anos.
Sério, filho? E depois?
Depois eu vou ficar um adulto.
The brain never stops developing until you die. If you're 100 years old and you learn something that you didn't know before, your brain makes new connections if you remember it the next day, right? But the most rapid period of brain development is in the first few years. But because it's so rapid and because it builds the foundation, that's why it's so important. Because everything that follows has to build on that foundation made in the first few years.
You could think about the baby's brain as kind of like old Paris, where there were a million little tiny streets all wiggling around in different directions. So in the baby's brain, there's many, many different routes and possible connections from one neuron, one nerve cell to another nerve cell. What happens in development is that those pathways that are used a lot get maintained and strengthened, and the ones that aren't used just sort of disappear. So the adult brain looks much more like Paris after Monsieur Haussmann had tidied it up. So there's big boulevards, big straight roads that go from one place to another very quickly and very straightforwardly, but you don't have the kind of little side paths that you have in the baby's brain.
Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change with experience. So we think of children as being the most plastic brain in the universe, right? It is the most adaptable device, more than any machine, certainly more than adults. So that can be both good and bad. If your experience is full of, talk and relationship building and social understanding and play and imagination, your brain soars. You build expectancies related to those experiences. If your life is full of abuse, is full of scary experiences, of threats, of a lack of nutrition, many things can be threats to that brain's development. Then you close down your expectancies. You close down your joy of life and your tendency to want to experience the next new thing. So you can either grow or limit your potential in that early period based on what your experiences are.
The example is if you're a flower trying to grow in a desert and you have no water, then the flower will die. So whatever the flower, whatever is genetically programmed for the flower to grow will not manifest itself unless it gets the water. Or the water in this case is parenting, early life stimulation.
Tônia! Tu tá aí?
Achou?
Tem mais.
Ah, pegou mais pra ela. E ela viu os irmãos dela indo pro colégio. Ela
Um copinho aqui, ótimo.
O que tu vai fazer com o copinho? Ah, sim. Presta atenção, mãe. Uhum. Aqui. Mas olha só, mãe.
Que legal que tá ficando.
Que alto que ficou. Olha. Oh! Não faz mal. Vamos juntar, ó. Eu te ajudo nessa aqui.
The only way that children can achieve this amazing capacity for learning and exploration, that all depends on the fact that they have a very secure, stable, loving set of caregivers, people who are taking care of them. And that love is really what's the necessary background for all of the exploration and learning to take place.
O que me vem à cabeça é uma imagem que é da minha infância. Sabe o que é? O meu pai tinha uma loja de material de construção. E uma das coisas que a gente vendia muito para os clientes era aquela fita isolante, né? Então, para mim, o que é o afeto? O afeto é a fita isolante das ligações entre os neurônios. Uma vez que você tem a ligação entre os neurônios, vem o afeto e faz com que aquela ligação seja tão forte que ela nunca mais será desfeita.
Probably the most significant discovery is that brain development is influenced as much by the environment as it is by genetics. You know, we're living through a scientific revolution right now that has shown that this old debate about nature versus nurture or genetics versus environment is over. It's not one or the other, it's both. So, you know, I think what's really important is to know that beginning at birth, actually even before birth, the experiences that a young child has, the interactions a child has with people, literally gets under the skin and into the brain and affects how brain circuits are made, how the architecture of the brain is built. So early experience literally shapes the architecture of the developing brain.
I think that the evidence of who they are is there the moment they're born. But you can't know really. I mean, every step along the way they're transforming and growing, right?
I think that, you know, we have genetic dispositions to things like anxiety, you know, ADD, certain things like that. So I think that carries an element to it. But I think a lot of how your child becomes is also a product of how you handle those things. So it becomes a product of environment. What kind of home do you have? What kind of decisions do you make at home? How do you behave? How do you lead your own behavior, considering whatever genetic predispositions or conditions you might have?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V.
When a baby is born and you're a parent for the first time, how do you know how to parent? How do you know how to respond to a baby? Well, part of it is like everything else. It's built into our genetics, but it's affected by experience. It's not like you read the textbook. It said you're biologically programmed to do that. And you have to be, because if we weren't, we would have gone extinct as a species, because babies are so helpless, right? But how come some people, you put a baby in their arms, their own baby, and they don't make eye contact, and they don't respond, and the baby is doing all kinds of things to attract the parent's attention, and the parent isn't responding. And so people who don't know anything about this would say, look at that heartless, cruel, cold parent. Not even how could you resist? I can't even resist this baby smiling and this person is not. Well, the answer is because it's very likely that when that person was a baby, whoever was caring for that baby did not respond in that way. And literally, this is the field of epigenetics. So the genes that affect that behavior are affected by experience, and there are chemical groups attached to some of these genes that actually affect gene expression that could affect your behavior.
One of the things that drew me to the epigenetic story was studies of maternal behavior in Norwegian rats. And it turns out that in Norwegian rats, some mothers lick and groom a lot, and other mothers don't lick and groom very much. And if you had a high licking and grooming mother and you took her pup out very, very early, put her with a low licking and grooming mother, when the next generation came up, this pup was a low licker and groomer, just like the pup and the mother that raised her, not the biological mother. So it looked like the nurture pattern made more of a difference than the biological descent in terms of the DNA sharing and the rest of it.
And so the same thing with humans who were severely deprived as babies or didn't have good attachments. Biologically, there's a difficulty in knowing how to attach to babies because it wasn't in your experience way back that you don't remember. Even though they love them, they just don't know how.
One reason people have studied children who are growing up in institutions is it's a way to understand what happens when the brain is deprived of all sorts of experiences. So in many institutions, babies lie in a crib staring at a white ceiling for the first year of life. So there's no visual information. There's nobody talking to them, no one touching them except to change them a few times a day. So the kind of deprivation that occurs in institutional environments leads to a whole cascade of effects. They have lower IQ, severe language problems, severe attachment problems. They don't know how to have a relationship with an adult. As they get older, they also don't know how to have a relationship with peers. So in our case, the treatment was high quality foster care, which we had to build ourselves because there was none in Bucharest, Romania when we started. So we studied a large number of kids when they were babies, and we did an extensive assessment on them in many domains, brain, cognition, language, and we've studied their development for the last 12 years in many, many different domains. Now, what's powerful about this is that we knew that over time, many of the kids in the institutional group would leave the institution because we had no control over this. The government did this, but it turns out it didn't matter. If you looked at the data based on what group you were assigned to, if you were assigned to the institutional group and spent more than just a few years there, 12 years later, you still suffer the consequences, even if you were in a family after the age of 4 or 5, because it was where you spent those years in those first few years of life that was most critical. When we consider all the things that kids don't get when raised in an institution, probably at the top of the list would be a caregiver who is really devoted to that kid and committed to that kid.
A minha relação com o Isaías é maravilhosa, porque 6 horas já tá, eu acordo, eu só fico olhando, quando eu olho pra trás já tá. Aí começa a dar, é que as primeiras, os nenês sempre são as primeiras sílabas, dar, mamar. Não sei se você percebeu, que ele tá tentando falar mamar, Mamãe, calma, meu filho, vai empurrando aí. O pai dele ia ficar doido porque ela fala mamãe primeiro, né? Porque o outro foi o papai primeiro, né? Ó, é hora do almoço. Vê, nego. É assim, ele acorda assim, aí observa o movimento. Né, nego? Olha lá. Vê, mãe. Aí deixa ele acordar por ele mesmo, pra ele observar o movimento. Tá diferente aqui, a porta tá... Peraí, a porta tá aberta. Deixa eu pegar ele aqui. Quer fugir, né? Vem. Oi, meu nego. Acordou, foi? Acordadão. Que zelo gostoso. Então, como vocês podem ver, minha relação com ele é maravilhosa, eu gosto. Meu companheirinho, entendeu? Quando todo mundo sai, vai todo mundo trabalhar, esse cara aqui é meu companheiro. Dou risada com ele, porque pra passar qualquer música ele fica antenado, ele é esperto, né? Acordou, mãe? Cadê dedinho?
Isis, quais são as grandes dificuldades?
Bom, a questão, assim, do emprego, entendeu? E, assim, no momento, eu tô começando devagarzinho a montar minhas coisas. Como vocês podem ver, não tenho uma cadeira, não tenho uma cama. Essas são minhas dificuldades mesmo, as prioridades. Porque eu acho que dentro de uma casa você deveria ter pelo menos um básico, né?
O que você acha que é mais importante para ele nesse período da vida dele?
A minha total segurança, né? Eu estando sempre lado a lado dele, entendeu? Se ele cair, eu levantar ele. É a minha segurança, pra ele ver que a mamãe tá aqui, né?
Qual que é a importância que você acha que você tem na vida dele?
Eu acho que é aprendizado, né? A educação, tudo. Eu sou o escudo dele. Sou a Mulher Maravilha pra ele. Ele me vê assim, cara. O pai dele chega, já vai um pouquinho para dele que reconhece, mas volta pra cá na hora do TT, na hora da mamar, tudo. Né, viu?
E o que ele representa pra você?
Ele é tudo pra mim. Nossa, ele é a minha vida, esses caras. Nossa, mato e morro pros meus filhos, cara. Nossa, eu faço do possível e do impossível por eles, mano. Todo tipo de amor que eu puder e de aprendizado, carinho, assim. Só o fato de ele estar batendo assim na minha mãozinha, já tá aprendendo já, entendeu? Ensinar ele batendo palminha, eu vou até o céu quando eu vejo ele batendo palminha, cara. Vou ter que apelar, cara. Vou.
Parents sometimes worry that they don't have the money, they don't have the time, they can't buy their children fancy toys and computers and iPads and iPhones. What I like to tell them it's not those toys. Don't worry about having those little technologies and being able to afford those things. It's you. You're the most important thing in that child's life. It's you. You're the best teacher. You're the first teacher. And it's the things that come for free. It's your words. It's your love. It's your play. It's that connection that you build between you and your child. That means all the difference in the world. That seeds the path for success in school and in life, and it's you. So as exhausting as it is to be a parent, and it is exhausting, it's the hardest job in the world, I think. But look at the power that you have to put your child on that trajectory for all of their lives.